When you're doing anything self-improvement related, you want to be an implementer. You want to be someone who doesn't just consume a bunch of ideas about how to improve your life. You want to be someone who actually implements and does things. But how do you choose what to even try? How do you choose the things you do to try and improve your life? I want to make a video about this because I see a lot of people make a specific mistake that limits your options, and that can be a serious hindrance in your own personal development. So think about what you consider available options. You have something in your life you want to improve, you have some problem you want to solve, and then how do you choose a potential solution? So should you go and scream at the ocean in order to process your anger? Should you hang upside down in order to improve circulation in your head and regrow your hair? Should you wear some crystal bracelet in order to improve your energy flow and deal with your anxiety? Should you use incense sticks? Whatever, right? There's so many solutions from so many corners of self-development. How do you even choose? Well, most people have a terrible model for how to choose among these options. And it's not really your fault. It's just part of human nature. So part of human nature is that we are deeply tribal. And so the way we choose and narrow down options is generally that we think about, well, what tribe do I belong to? And if I did this and people from my tribe heard about it, what would they think about it? And so we filter out all the options that don't fit our tribe. Needless to say, this takes a lot of options off the table, regardless of whether they might be useful or not. My personal approach for this has always been that almost anything is fair game. And I'll give you the more specific set of rules I follow here. But basically, almost anything is fair game. And I have done all kinds of things, right? From things like sciencey stuff, like, doing a full blood panel in order to tweak the dosages of supplements I take, to doing a lot of like quantified self stuff, with like smart watches and other devices, tracking various things about myself. But I've also done all kinds of things like, tapping and energy work and Tai Chi, various forms of meditation and so on. And when people hear this, they're often surprised because basically they say, oh, you've done this stuff. I thought you were from the sciencey tribe, right? I thought we didn't do this kind of thing. And similarly, I don't drink alcohol. I've never smoked a cigarette or weed or anything like that, but I have done psychedelic plant medicine work. Again, similar reaction. People are often surprised because they're like, oh, I thought you were from the anti-drug tribe. You have like an image in your head of what someone looks like who takes psychedelics and what someone looks like who's like sciencey. And you can't imagine that those could be the same person. So this kind of tribalism is not a great way to select the best possible options. On the other hand, the solution is also not to be just open-minded to absolutely everything, right? You don't want to be so open-minded that your brain falls out. So how do we solve this? Here is the approach I take. The first rule is that anything that comes to you as a potential solution, as long as there is a fair assumption that it won't do any harm, you might as well try it. Don't dismiss things out of hand just because they seem strange to you, and don't dismiss things simply because they don't fit into your own tribe. So, for example, look, I'm a big fan of the scientific method. I think it's amazing that we as in humanity have come up with the scientific method. And we've taken it as far as we have. Absolutely amazing that we found this way to like crowdsource all this work to where you can, go on the internet, type in, find some studies and get some hint of what might be true about something, because finding out what is true about anything is very difficult. It's amazing that we have this as a tool, that we have science-based solutions at our disposal. Absolutely fantastic. But keep in mind that this is always a work in progress. And if science teaches us anything, the stuff that works, the stuff that is true, is very often strange and counterintuitive. And then, years and years later, as people get used to it, then it becomes normal and it's no longer seen as strange. But you don't have to wait until mass consensus catches up. Don't think that the truth is set in stone and peer-reviewed science knows all of the truth. No one who does actual science believes that, right? So being part of like the science tribe and having that kind of worldview is not very constructive. So instead, yes, be open-minded about options that come your way and ask yourself, well, is this likely to do any harm? So, if you have some anger or grief or whatever and a friend comes to you and says, listen, shouting at the ocean, that's the solution. You should go down to the seaside and just shout it all out. That might help you. Maybe you read a story of someone who's helped. And you can think about, well, will this do any harm? Probably not, right? So you might as well try. Yes, it seems weird, but you might as well try and find out what you feel like afterwards. I also think similarly about many traditional things, maybe it's like, hey, someone comes and says, my tradition with the problem you have, you sit in this sauna and we have these herbs that we burn, and then you go outside and we bury you in the mud and someone does like a shamanic fire dance or whatever. This is how we solve your problems. Like, that sounds pretty weird. But you might as well try, sitting in a sauna and then being buried in mud, it probably doesn't do any harm. And who knows, maybe it helps. So this is basically how I choose what to be open-minded about and what my options are, right? Like, if it's not going to do any harm, I don't care about how weird it is, I'm willing to try. But then there's another component to this, which is how do we not be fooled, okay? We've taken care of one side of it. You can prevent yourself with this approach. You can prevent yourself from limiting yourself and fooling yourself into thinking that you already know what's true and what's not and what works and what doesn't. And taking lots of options that could be helpful off the table. That's one way in which you can fool yourself. But the other way is that you can go like too far down some weird rabbit hole and, end up in some kind of a cult or something, or do something that ends up being like stupid and harmful, right? We also don't want that. So how do we avoid that? This is where a very important rule that I follow comes in. Things that work, work. So if someone presents you with a solution and says, listen, do this thing, like, okay, crystals, right? For me, that's one of the things that comes to mind when I think, oh, that's probably ridiculous, right? But I'm just going to use that as an example. Let's say you suffer from anxiety. You always feel super anxious. It's really a problem in your life. You want to solve this problem. Someone comes to you and says, listen, there's specific crystals that are in tune with energy, blah, 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 right? And you have to, put this crystal in this corner of the room and wear this crystal as a bracelet and so on. And that's going to help you feel less anxious. Well, is it going to do any harm? Probably not. So maybe you try, right? But the thing is, if it works, it works. If you're wearing the crystals and you have the crystals in your room and so on, and you still feel anxious, don't be in denial about it. And realize that, hey, I did the thing. I still feel anxious. This doesn't work. And this is important. Don't let people tell you that if it doesn't work, what you need is more crystals. Or my favorite, and this is something that cults love to do, is telling you that you need to believe harder, right? So it's like you're doing some kind of a thing, and the reason it's not working is you don't believe in it hard enough, right? And if you believed more, and yeah, again, like more crystals and more belief in crystals, that's going to solve your problems. But this is not only true of a spiritual kind of woo-woo solution like crystals. It is the same with if someone tells you, hey, start the keto diet and that's going to solve your your skin issues. And then you do the keto diet and you still have the same skin issues, and they tell you, well, you have to go even further. You have to go only meat, right? You have to now eat raw meat or whatever, right? It's just like the escalation of you have to go even harder on the thing that's not working. This is where my approach is to be honest about what's going on, to be honest about whether something is working or not, and not let people or circumstances push me into doubling down on something that's not working. I believe that your time and energy is better spent trying something else because stuff that works, works. And in case you're wondering, what about the placebo effect? What if the thing I'm doing only works because of the placebo effect? Well, it doesn't matter. Again, if it's not doing any harm, whether it's the placebo effect or something else that's creating the positive effect in your life that you're looking for, it doesn't matter because it works. So that's it. That is a better way to select potential things to try to improve your life. And really can be summarized as what works, works, right? Be open-minded about possible solutions as long as they do no harm. But have that standard, have a high standard where you say, hey, if this is advertised as a solution to my problem and I do it and it doesn't solve my problem, I'm going to move on and try something else. Now, of course, there's nuance here because there's certain things where it's like, well, maybe the problem is that you didn't do something consistently enough. Maybe there's, you're trying to build a habit and someone tells you, here's how to build a habit. It's not working. Well, is that a problem of the method? Is that a problem of you? This is something we can have a long discussion about, and I'm willing to have that, right? We can talk about that in the Icario community if you're interested. But I wanted to provide this relatively simple model and idea that has helped me a lot in exploring my options very widely and often finding very interesting solutions in unexpected corners. So I hope it helps you do the same.